Welcome to Indian time. This is the month of Shashpanis, which is the month of the huckleberry. Place names for this show will be Instskwi, which is what we call plains. There was an abundance of elderberry in the area that Salish people went and picked, so that named it Instskwi, place of elderberry. The other name will be Sootkwet Shwe, which is coming back this way, coming back east. Sootkwet Shwe is what we call Perma. I've used this place name before. We're going to go around and start probably saying some of the old place names that you heard before. Perma is what is Sootkwet Shwe, and the story behind that is that what it says, what Sootkwet Shwe means is that you're going down to the edge of the water and you're hollering. And this is what they done a long time ago, before the bridge and before the road through there. They had a ferry crossing there. So sometimes travelers would come down, Indian people would come down to the water, edge of the water by Perma, and the ferry would be across on the other side. So they would have to holler for the ferry to come over. So you're going down to the water and you're hollering, Sootkwet Shwe, and that's how it got its name. As I said, this is the month of huckleberries, Stasha. This is the time when Indian people, and today we still do, go out and pick huckleberries and get ready for the winter months. My understanding is that buckhorn was pretty good this year, and I don't know if it's still good. If you haven't gotten your huckleberries, you better do it soon before they start closing down the forest because of the forest fire danger. Also, other berries that we gathered at this time that's ready for this time is our foam berries, thimbleberries, raspberries. All the berries this time of the year were gathered, and again, a long time ago, the people depended on these berries to gather them, to pick them and get ready for the winter months. If you didn't pick these berries and get your food supply in, then you were going to get hungry over the winter months. So it's a busy time this time of the year, out there digging berries and whatever. A long time ago, they'd be digging the berries and putting the berries into bark baskets that were made out of cedar bark and other barks. While in the springtime, when the bark is fresh and easy to work, is the time that they would go out and make these bark baskets and get those ready and save those for this time of the year to go out and pick the berries. Again, some of the things that happen is mostly berry picking and getting ready for the winter months, and pretty quick it'd be getting into the hunting season. Some of the things that are happening around here for you powwowers, as you all know, there's a powwow coming up at the Riverfront Powwow, which is in Spokane, coming up this weekend, and the weekend of the August 24th and 25th. There are some meetings that the elders I'm having with the elders on different topics, the Lewis and Clark issue, the language issues, and many different things. So the regular elders meeting will start up on the first Wednesday of October. So those of you that need answers, from the elders, and those of you that need to meet with the elders, please call the office at 745-4572 and schedule time. Sometimes we get booked early, so we'll have to put you off for a month. Today, my guest is going to be Shirley Trahan from St. Ignatius. She has joined our Salish Pend Oreille Culture Committee. She is now an employee of the tribe. Her title is going to be the language specialist, and she has many ideas and many plans for our language program. And so with that, I would like to introduce Shirley Trahan, and I'd just like her to tell a little bit about herself and about the future plans of the language program for the Salish Pend Oreille Culture Committee. Shirley?
I'm Shirley Trahan. I grew up in the St. Ignatius area, and my parents were real traditional, and my mother saw to it that I learned the language. At first I just understood it real well. I was pretty shy to talk, but I understood the language really well. And then when I started working at the school in St. Ignatius as a language teacher, I became more and more fluent, and now I can converse in our language. And I have decided to devote the rest of my life to try to teach the language and get the language out there to all the people who really want to learn it. And I have a lot of plans, a lot of ideas, and I hope I can follow through on most of them. My children don't speak the language. They understand some because they spent a lot of time with my mother, especially my youngest daughter, Adele. She can understand pretty well. She's also able to read and write the language. And that's one of my plans, is to start teaching basic Salish. I have already started, and I had one student, but which was really good. We're going to work on standardizing the alphabet and get it set just one way so that everybody will write it just one way. And I have planned to meet with the elders on that next week and get their input on it. And reading and writing the language is just one way of doing it. You can learn a lot that way, but I really believe that if you hear the language spoken a lot, and if you know some of the words, to speak it as much as possible. And I'd like to ask all of the people to know the language, to speak the language as much as possible to your family and to other people you know who speak the language. And besides teaching the basics of the language, which is all the sounds and the alphabet, I plan to go into the intermediate, which is probably doing basic phrases and real easy sentences, and then go into more advanced. I'd really like to see some more advanced speakers. I'm sure there's a lot of people who've already taken basic language lessons, and I'd like to see them advance even more. I understand there's some classes going on for more advanced speakers, in which I'm really glad. I think that's really great. And with the help of the elders, I have some plans to revise and review the current publications at the Culture Committee and do some corrections and maybe add some things to them which we feel may be left out. And then also plan on working on lesson plans for my classes at the Culture Committee, and maybe extending those to the teachers at the public schools or wherever they're being taught, wherever the language is being taught.
By doing this, Shirley, how would that help by standardizing or by coming up with some of the lesson plans?
If it's standardized, if the alphabet is standardized, then it will be said just one way. I mean, the sounds will be made just one way. As it is, there's a few words who sound a little different because it's written a little different. And I guess, for instance, one word is queen. Somebody changed the EY to I and makes it sound like queen. And so I just kind of like to see if that's, if the elders think it should be that way.
Okay, now my understanding, I think how that came about was through, you know, each linguist has their own method of writing the language, and I think that's how this change came about. The first linguist, I think, that we utilized did use the EY. Then we come with another linguist who comes with just the I for different reasons, their different reasons. So, and I think it's a good idea what you're doing to standardize, I guess, the way things are written. And my understanding, I'll have to check again with the Tribal Council, but my understanding was a while back that the culture committees and the language specialists were giving that responsibility to standardize the way language is written, the way words were created for new things that we have that we don't have words for. And my understanding was that there was to go through the culture committees and the elders to come up with a new word if needed, to standardize everything so that all teachers throughout the reservation would then have the same word, use the same word, so it wouldn't confuse the language or the learners.
That's good. And along with that is lesson plans and curriculum development. I understand different people have done curriculum development, and of course all of the language teachers have done their own lesson plans, and maybe some of this could be developed and shared with everybody who's a teacher. And one of the ideas I've had is to try to get a language immersion school here on our reservation, maybe in St. Ignatius, maybe in Arley, I don't know, but I really feel it's needed. Like I said, the more the language is spoken, the more people will begin to understand it and learn it. And I just really think that's a good idea to use the immersion plan. And one of the things we talked about at our meeting this morning was having a skit or a play in the language, which I think would be really fun. And so we would really like to do that. We'd like to just have some language stuff done on a program or a skit.
Okay, my understanding is that there was earlier there was some kind of play or classes or school or something going on at the Arley Power ground. So maybe those in the audience that might want to come up with an idea what kind of play or skit to develop in the Salish language, contact Shirley at our office at the Longhouse. I think it would be a great way to express not only the language but express the way and the values of Salish people. So call 745-4572 if you have any interest and maybe ideas to share with Shirley. With that, we'll take a short break here, Shirley, and come back with more information.
The choices we make today affect our options for tomorrow. I choose not to smoke and pursued my ability to sing. I've been able to travel, make new friends, and see different cultures. Choose carefully. Don't limit your future.
Welcome back to Indian Time. My guest today is Shirley Trahan, who is a new employee of the tribe. She is our language specialist at the Salish Ponderay Culture Committee. Place names again for this show is Intsqui, which is plains, and So'otqwet Shwe, which is Perma. Shirley, going back to some of the things that you've done in the past, you have taught school or taught language at the St. Ignatius school system for 10 years, I understand.
Yes.
What do you feel while you were there, what kinds of things happened that changes that were good or bad when you were trying to teach the language there?
Well, it was hard at first because there were no lesson plans. I had to make up my own, and a lot of times I wasn't sure if it was going to be good, or I didn't know whether it would, work with the kids, whether they'd be able to work with it. But that was one of the hardest things. But when you begin to make lesson plans, it gets easier and easier. And the kids, a lot of them were real glad to have the language class there, and a lot of the teachers were supportive, and there were a few that weren't, but that didn't matter. I was there and I taught the best I could, and I guess one of the hardest things was not hearing from the parents. There were a few parents that came by and mentioned how glad they were that the Salish language was being taught at the public school, but the majority of parents didn't come to school and or didn't call and let me know that I might be doing a good job. I might see some parents in the store or something, and they would say, "Well, I'm glad you're there, and you're doing a good job." But for the most part, most of the parents, didn't give any input. I guess that was probably the worst part of it. The administration were, especially the superintendents, they were pretty supportive, and my boss was pretty supportive. So that made it a lot easier. And there were several teachers who were real encouraging.
So did you feel that over the years from the time you started there until the time you left, you felt that there was a better understanding of the importance of the Salish language in the public school system?
Oh gosh, I think so. I think it began to be more and more known throughout the reservation, that a language program would be good for the kids. And I hope that message got out to a lot of people, because I noticed Dixon has a language program now, and so does Camas Prairie, and they're going to start in Hot Springs. And Ronan has a language program, and Arlie had theirs for years before Mission did, I think. And I'm really glad that pretty much all the towns where schools are have a language program.
So we always hear, you know, that a person that learns 2 languages does a lot better in their lives in school, and so I think hopefully that the public school system has realized that Salish language is just the same as another language compared to, you know, when students take up French or take up Spanish or take up, you know, it only makes sense that the school systems would take up the Salish language, because this is a reservation where the majority of the children here are in the school systems. A lot of the grade school system especially are Native Americans of the tradition.
Yes, that's very true. Some students have mentioned to me that they were upset that the Salish language wasn't taught after the 6th grade. It stopped there, and they were frustrated that they had to take Spanish, and they didn't feel that it was relevant to their lives, because they're, you know, Native Americans from here. And so they were frustrated with that, and I told them, well, you know, just talk to people about it and tell them how you feel. Tell your teachers, tell the superintendent, tell everybody, you know, that you think that the Salish language should be taught in all the grades and not just, you know, elementary. And that you don't want to learn Spanish, you want to learn your own native language. And we also have Jerry McDonald, who's teaching Native American studies in the, I believe it's high school level, and she incorporates the language into her classes also. So they're getting a little bit, but would be so good if they could have it through all of the K through 12 in St. Ignatius especially.
Well, Shirley, I know in my own heart, I know why retaining the language for me is important and has been important. Tell me in your words how you feel, why retaining our language is so important.
Well, it was taught to me by my family. My whole family spoke it. And if I go somewhere and I don't hear someone speak it, it's so strange. And I really believe the language is so special. It's because it's who I am. It's who my people are. And I just would really feel awful if that language were to be gone. And I'm hoping my efforts will help to keep it alive. I really don't want to see it go away, because we'd be losing a great treasure, a real treasure. And any time that there's someone, I've heard you say it, Tony, that any time that someone who speaks the language passes on, especially someone not very old, that it's a great loss. And it's really a loss not to hear it spoken. And one of our elders this morning mentioned how good she feels, and she's mentioned it before, that whenever she gets to the culture committee and she hears people speaking the language, it really makes her feel good. And it's very important to me. It's my life. It's I don't know how I live, I think. And I just hope and pray that I can just pass it on and pass it on to my kids, especially, and my grandkids. And other people who are interested. And I just don't plan on stopping teaching it. I will always find some encouragement somewhere to keep going. And I've gotten a lot of encouragement from the elders to do what I'm doing.
I think, I've got, for the past 26 years, I've had the same encouragement and guidance from the elders that has put me where I'm at today. And like you, I feel like the language is not only something that is spoken, but it's our history, it's our way of life, our stories, our culture. Everything that we do is in our language.
That's right.
And without the language, I remember my grandmother and other elders always saying that the day that we all speak the same language will be the end, because there's no reason to go on, because we're all the same. And so that we need to retain our language and hold on to it, so that when the time comes, our language will be what we are identified by, who we are, and our values as Salish people is in the language.
That's right.
So I guess I'm really happy, Shirley, that you have joined our committee. I am very familiar with you. I grew up with you, and I know who you are. I know your family, and I know how important this is to you, and how you've said it over and over and over again, how important the language is to you. And I just feel fortunate that you are now part of the program. And I feel like our program is now going to go in many different directions. Our program is going to advance now with the ideas and the work that you get. And I just hope that we can get the support that you need to continue on to make this happen. And for those of you in the audience that are thinking about learning the language, or those of you that know the language and are thinking of teaching the language, I encourage you to really move forward with this, to call Shirley, to talk to Shirley and see what you can do, how you can help to make retaining, getting our language back, spoken more often, back where it should be. I encourage you, please, somehow come forward and call Shirley. We are out of time right now, so I would like to say, I'll see you at the next show.